This event is about planning on K254 corridor. The project we're working on is corridor management. And I think that it's important that we make a distinction between that. It's the planning process that we're doing. I think a lot of people think that maybe if there's a construction project coming from this, but at this time we don't have any construction projects authorized for K254 directly related to this plan. But what we are doing is planning the future of K254. Our consultant team has been very hard at work collecting data on this corridor since our last meeting. In the early or late spring is when we did the last meeting. They've been looking at things like economic analysis and land use planning, crash histories on our corridor, and just to name a few of those. So they've been very hard at work. They've gathered that data. They've done some investigation. They're starting to come up with this idea of what our traffic model will be out here on K254 and what the transportation need is on K254. So really the goal of this plan is to provide for that transportation need on K254 now and into the future. What we want is a safe corridor that moves people efficiently and provides economic opportunities along the corridor. So it's a really important thing. I thank you guys for being here. This is going to be 2 of 4 of our public meetings, so it's really important that you hear from the public. What we have out here on these tables are a long-term improvement and an interim improvement. And nothing we have out there is in really a final state at this point. This is all potential improvements, and so those are our candidate improvements. And potentially the candidate improvements could be advanced, and maybe they make it into the final plan, and from there maybe they do make it into a construction project. But really, what we're doing now is just the plan. So what we have tonight is a presentation, and I'm going to pass this off to our consultant team. They're going to share more about what they have found on our corridor. So please join me in welcoming Travis, and she's going to share more about our corridor.
Thank you, David. David Sykes is our Special Projects Manager for K254, so this is his project. My name is Travis Pendleton. What I do is I'm a city planner, and I help people have conversations about a lot of different things. And so my company, which is called Muriel, was part of the consulting team. What I'm going to do today, if we go to the next slide, is go through about the things that we're going to share with you. And so we want to do a project overview. David is giving you a really high level of that. I'm going to get into that in a little bit more detail. I also want to talk to you about what we've heard and what we've learned. And so I'm going to share some things, and then people from our consulting team, some of our engineers are going to talk to you. Then we want to get into probably what you are all maybe thinking about, which is what type of improvement strategies are anticipated for K254. And if you were, a lot of you were here early, and thank you so much for being early. You've looked at some of those maps, and those show what we're thinking about right now. But you can have some other ideas, and so we want to hear about that. We also want to give you a lot of time today to comment and talk to us. So this presentation is not going to be really long. Okay, we want to give you lots of time to talk. Then we'll get into next steps. Let's go to the next slide. As you know, this is K254. We're looking at generally from Wichita to El Dorado. That's our area. When you hear us say K254 corridor, we're talking about not just the highway itself, the pavement, but like that land around that. That makes up a corridor. Next slide. We have a planning process that we started in the summer, and it's going to take us a year to get through that. So we'll be finished with our corridor management plan by the summertime. How many of you were here at the first public meeting? Okay, so some of you might have seen this slide before. Nothing has changed. This is the process that we have to go through. We not only have community engagement running through the whole entire process for this year, but there are certain things that we need to be sure that we look at, like the market, like land use and development, what's happening right now versus what's proposed to happen in the future. Traffic data, lots of different things. We have to go through that process. Let's go to the next slide. There are lots of people that are interested in K254. There are all the cities, there's the county, there's K254, there's the 254 Association, there are all the people who live here. Lots of people who are interested and involved in trying to improve and focus on K254. And so we just want you to know that we're talking to as many people as possible, and as we have our conversations, we hear about other groups that we need to be sure that we engage, and so we want to do that. One of the groups that we have heard a lot about is trying to talk to students, because we have a lot of young drivers in the corridor, and so we've been trying to find ways to do that as well. Let's go to the next slide. We have 4 phases of engagement. David mentioned to you all that we have 4 public meetings planned. We have like a theme that you'll see as we go through each phase of engagement. The first one was about issues and opportunities. And so those who were at that meeting looked at maps and you noted where you saw big issues, big opportunities for addressing some of the issues for K254. We also are in phase 2, which is where we are right now, which is potential improvements. And so that's where we take what we've heard so far, data analysis, all of that, and start to try to identify where certain strategies or improvement strategies could go. That's where we are now. From here, we're going to get into our 3rd phase of engagement, which is trying to identify the things that are the most preferred. It's like when you have a universe of all these things, you want to kind of narrow that down. And so that's what we're going to be doing in the 3rd phase. Then we're going to have a final document that includes the recommendations for K254. And again, it's a planning document. Going to the next slide. For our first round of community engagement, as I mentioned, we did focus on issues and opportunities. We have a steering committee meeting for the project, and it's made up of all those different types of stakeholders that I showed in the previous slide. We had our steering committee meeting. We also will have more steering committee meetings. We have had our public meeting. There are way more people here today, which is super cool, than the last time. We want to see more and more people. We also have online commenting going on. The online commenting, if you participated in it before, you can look at that. It's online right now. You can see all the different things that people have said. And then there are additional opportunities that you can use to give your feedback online. In terms of what we've heard, I'm going to give you a quick summary of that. This is a combination of in-person conversation and online engagement. And one of the things that you're going to see with that is there are a lot of comments about, you should do this thing, here's this other thing, you should think about this, right? And so making the corridor safe for everyone, I would say is probably the top thing. That's usually, when we have conversations with everyone, that is the number one thing, is making it safe. Also, how people drive, what their habits are. Sometimes, I was talking to the principal earlier, sometimes there's peer pressure when you're at an intersection, like hurry up. And so that can be important. So driving habits are important and how people move through the corridor. Making sure that our cross streets are good and improving those. Establishing consistent turn lanes, because every place doesn't have a lane that you can get in to turn. If you wanted to see that, maybe overpasses at certain locations. Entrance ramps and exits. So the next slide. Adding access and frontage roads, reducing the current speed limit. People are going really fast. It's a state highway, and that happens. But there was some concern or some comments about maybe knocking that speed limit down a bit. Improving economic development along the corridor. Some of that has to do with access, right? Because there are certain points along the corridor where you can come into certain cities, and that's important to your economic development. At the same time, we know that there is development happening, and they care about access too, so we have to balance that. And then there are certain things. People are asking about rumble strips and stop signs and traffic signals, basically to let people know that you're about to come from a side street onto K254. What are the things that we could do to alert people to that change? So y'all had some great ideas for that. Also accommodating semi-trucks and farming. People are pulling large vehicles, large farm implements. And so we need to figure out how to do that. And they're also trying to turn on the K254 with those, and they're not, sometimes the medians aren't wide enough for that, so they're hanging out, that's not safe. And then increasing police presence along the corridor, and that really had to do with, like, do you catch someone when they're doing something they're not supposed to do? How do we do that? So that is a high-level overview of what we heard last time. Again, a lot of the feedback that we had online, you can find it right now online if you go online, because everything from the online commenting portion, you can see what people have been commenting on. You can see where they were commenting. Okay? So with that, I'm going to pass to Mandy, and she wants to go through with you all what are some of the details of our process.
So since the last time we met, we've taken your information that you shared, and we're really crunching the numbers, looking at what the land use is, what the market analysis says would be supported out here. We've taken that information and modeled some traffic volumes, and ultimately we've thrown some stuff on a map for you guys to talk about tonight, but I will let Andy maybe talk a little bit more about what a market analysis is and kind of what we learned from that.
Thank you. Andy Feaster with Development Strategies. And we helped kind of assess market potential on this corridor. And we all know that the K254 corridor is key transportation route for you all and for commerce in the region. And that as things continue to grow in the corridor, it's creating more challenges from a traffic perspective and safety perspective, and certainly from a market perspective as well. Next, please. And so what we looked at was the corridor. We looked at kind of this broader study area that we call the baby whale, just kind of shaped like a whale, and kind of the whole region to understand what's going on and what this area is already capturing. And as you know, there's been a lot of growth, particularly if you go outside the corridor into the baby whale. No, I can't not say that, sorry. You know, almost half of industrial growth has occurred in this general area, and a lot of residential growth is happening. And we think that's going to continue. Next, please. And so when we look at the market analysis, it's thinking about who uses this corridor, who's going to live here and work here, and other things. We looked at what's here today and what are some competitive districts for retail, for hospitality, but primarily for industrial and residential. And we, you know, with the land use team, think about where this could go and how it impacts the traffic and the infrastructure, future traffic needs, etc. Next, please. And so really at the crux of our analysis was looking at growth. And we looked kind of at growth if it continued like it has the last decade or so, all the way to growth if the Integra facility gets improved and built, which will substantially increase demand for industrial and the traffic that brings for supportive uses, and also bring in a lot of potential residents in the general area. And so that analysis really, you know, gives the range of potential new households over the next 10, 20 years. And Kristen's going to talk a little bit about the land use implications that really start to form the backbone of the traffic analysis.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Zimmerman, and I'm a team lead with Professional Engineering Consultants, or PEC, headquartered in Wichita. So our team took the work that Andy and his team did and with the market analysis and started in on a land use plan. So we knew that it was really important for this plan to be based in market realities. And so we took his plan, and you can see this number of acres for industrial, commercial, and residential, and put that, kind of gave it a place. Next slide. So we developed a conceptual land use plan. This is a market-based land use plan where, again, we were taking those acreages and densities and applying them to a physical location along the corridor. So these were, we worked with all of the local governments along the corridor to develop this. As you all know, local governments maintain control over what exactly will be developed within their jurisdiction. So in addition to this market-based land use plan, we also made another land use plan. Next slide. And this is, we are calling it our long-range plan. And this really is a compilation of all of the long-range comprehensive plans that individual jurisdictions have done. So once we got done with our market-based plan and the long-range land use plan, we turned that over to Mandy, and she and her team calculated traffic volumes.
So like Kristen said, we built on the information, that next slide, that Andy's team put together and Kristen's team put together, and we were able to say, okay, first we looked at and did traffic counts, and some of you probably saw the cameras out along the corridor counting traffic, maybe early May. I think it was early May we did traffic counts out here. So we collected the existing traffic volumes, and then for future volumes, we kind of look at the background growth. What has been the trend in background growth along the corridor? Added that to our existing volumes, and then to get really what the future volumes are, we took that land use, and based on a number of studies, we know on a particular size parcel or a particular size development, how many trips each of those is going to create. So if you look at the future land use map, it will, these are really hard to read it, I'm not expecting you to read it, but what we did was really apply all that information, and now we have what we anticipate to be future traffic volumes. And from that, we can say, okay, these are the kind of different intersection improvements that we should be looking at along this corridor. In addition to developing traffic volumes, we've also looked at the crashes along this corridor. In the next couple of slides, we'll see, you can see a heat map of, couple slides, one more. Yeah, so this is a heat map of the corridor of where these crashes are occurring. And this is a mix of all of the crashes. So this includes animal crashes too. But is this what people expected to see? Here's where the hot spots are based on your experience. Yeah, so that's what, when we start to develop our ultimate and interim improvements, maybe based on crashes, that's where we focus our priorities to do the improvements first. So this is, it's pretty common from a traffic engineering perspective to look at crashes in this way. When we pull out the animal crashes, we see the same trend. So from that, we started to develop potential improvements. And the thing to keep in mind about these potential improvements, these are just us throwing stuff on a map, and that's why we're here tonight, for you to really talk about what makes sense and what doesn't.
Yeah, so first thing, absolutely everything you see on these maps is not set in stone. It's here to start a conversation. And that's really why we want any input that we can get. You're going to see, and I know a lot of you have seen both boards. Here on my right, the ultimate configuration would be what this corridor is going to look like in the future. Now, it may not be exactly like this, but what it will be is it will be a fully access controlled freeway where only coming on and off at interchange locations. There may be overpasses where you can, you can go from south to north on a certain roadway over K254 or under K254, but you wouldn't have direct access to K254 at those locations. So we want to understand, and a lot of this was based on all the information we've just talked about. Potential future traffic, land use. There are some intersections here that don't have a lot of traffic that goes to the north. Maybe a $20 million interchange wouldn't be appropriate at that location. But obviously there's other things where we want to make sure that in the ultimate configuration, access isn't way more difficult, but ultimately it's much safer. There will be no at-grade intersections in the ultimate configuration. There will be no left turn out crossing traffic. You will get on and off 254 at interchange locations. So that's that one. And we want the impacts and the benefits that you see based on that. If you think, hey, I really think there should be an interchange here instead of just an overpass, make those notes and talk to the folks that are manning that table to discuss reasons why. Next slide. And then on my left will be the interim conditions. So these are some of the improvements that we've looked at that all of you will be able to relate to. I think there's like three, maybe four intersections along the entire corridor that has lighting at the intersection. So lighting is an easy improvement that could help you as a driver say, okay, I know that coming up, I see the street lights, coming up there's an intersection, right? So you're not making some drastic move right at the end to turn. Looking at pavement marking, so we know every median is different. We have narrow medians, we have some that are much wider. Those are bigger geometric improvements, but even some of the marking and signing at these are just inconsistent throughout the entire corridor. There may be signs that you see at one intersection that there's something completely different at another intersection. So those are improvements that can be made that are low cost and could improve safety until these bigger changes can be made. I know we've had a lot of comments about adding some geometric improvements like acceleration lanes. There are some intersections that if you turn right out onto 254, there is a accel lane that you can get up to speed before merging into traffic. But other intersections, there aren't. So those are some of the things we're looking at, and where they make the most sense. These are projects that could happen much sooner than some of the ultimate ones. So we want your thoughts for these. You're going to see all of the blown up intersections. Those are the existing conditions today. Those are not redesigns. What you see there is what's there. There are a couple that the aerials don't work, that like Adams has a westbound right turn lane, but it doesn't show up here because the aerial, it was so new. They just put it in not too long ago. But what you'll see is if there are things that you see that are problems, put it on the note cards, put it where you think, talk to the folks that are manning those stations, and give us some feedback that we will take back to see what else could we potentially do in the interim condition. Yeah.
You take a question.
We are taking questions now? Okay, go for it.
My question is, at Webb 254, I live there, and Greenwich 254, they did have rumble strips. And when they repaved the road, they took the rumble strips out, and they did not add them back. Why?
That I don't know.
You know what they told us when we questioned? It wasn't in the budget. You know how many wrecks we've had there? Like I said, I live right there at 254 Webb Road. In the last 3 or 4 months, we've had 10 wrecks. And a couple of them have been never hear about them on the news. Because we wait till we want to watch the news. You never hear about them on the news. At Greenwich, in the last 3 months, we've had 6. Rock Road, they went in and they added the speed up ramps and the turnoff to help cut down wrecks there. Since they added there's been 6 wrecks there. So that didn't do no good. My question is, how come they didn't add them to Webb Road and Greenwich?
That I don't know, but that's a good comment for you to put on that.
And you also said going north, there's not much traffic going north.
There are some.
Which are the dirt roads, which I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, our dirt road is like a highway. We got so many cars coming up and down. We live clear to the back of our property.
Yeah.
And that dust just travels clear back there. And there is traffic on there. Just because it's a dirt road, don't think that there ain't traffic, because there is. And they're rebuilding our road and stuff, and it's got a lot of loose gravel, and then people fly up and down there. We talked about the speed limit. I guess on a dirt road, it's 55. You know, that's me. I do 35, and it's bumpier and taller.
Yeah.
So, when are we gonna get our rumble strips back? Sure, this helps. And don't fix stupid, because I avoided a wreck today by car. Because I knew that guy who was gonna jump the gun, he was going north on Webb, right there at the intersection. And I told my wife, look, there's a wreck right here. And he wanted to come out and cut off in the median and cut everybody off that wanted to turn and go south. And eventually he did. But everybody had to pause. He had people wanting to turn to go south. We need law sitting there between 3:30 and 6 o'clock at those 3 intersections. Of course, we got highway patrol right there at Rock, but that don't stop the wrecks. But Rock, Webb, and Greenwich, they need to just sit there from 8 o'clock in the morning till about 10 o'clock.
So we've had some stakeholder meetings today, and we've had a pop-up like we had at other community college, and I've said that same, you can't fix it 2 or 3 times, because ultimately you can. But the goal is to make it safer and more consistent. Again, there are things that are out of anyone's control, but those are good comments.
About putting a company out there on Rock, that's going to be a whole lot more traffic.
And I will say this, it's in, can you go back a couple slides to the first one from the ultimate? You're gonna see a big box in that area. And it just means that KDOT is looking at this area in response to future development that we know of, right? And that's kind of on pause because that grant has been pushed to December before it's awarded. But they are looking at that as a separate entity. And I think I mentioned it at the last public meeting that if that development was to happen, KDOT understands that there's things that would have to happen to facilitate a safer, because there would be significant development, significant traffic increase, significant access issues. So we're kind of pushing that off and dealing with the rest of the corridor in this study, but KDOT is looking at that separately as its own independent area because of the importance of what may or may not be there. So just so you know, when you see that on the ultimate board, that's what that means.
I'll look at that one and this one. The only one I like was the one where they put the overpass needs to have on-ramps and off-ramps, not just overpass.
An interchange.
Are you designing to a budget, or are you gonna do your design and then a budget will be established?
No, we would design the ultimate of what needs to be out there and whatever that costs will have to cost. Now, I would say that there's no way this whole thing could be built in, the ultimate could be built in one project. It's hundreds of millions of dollars project, probably. But we would look at, and through our process with the study, is we would develop how could it be built in phases based on the importance or the biggest safety improvements that could help with operations and safety, and go from there. So yeah, it would be built over a long period of time in different pieces, but there's no designing to a budget, of concepting to a budget. It's what needs to be out there to improve safety, to handle the traffic and the future traffic, and then the last step is look at what's going to cost. And that's how we're going to do it.
My next question is, how do we know about these meetings? I learned this meeting on the news this morning. I alerted my neighbors, I don't know pretty well, and it's supposed to for our neighbors, which we only got a few out there that they're all torqued off because they knew nothing about this meeting.
So I think there's some things that you all can do as citizens. I think every single one of you, if you came in, got one of the info sheets that's got a QR code that goes to the website, we will make sure that website stays up to date with upcoming things. And then from our standpoint, we need to do a better job of getting that word out in social media, internet. We're not going to go door to door and put flyers probably on the door, but there's probably other ways that we can get that out better.
Did you leave your email address up here?
Did you put a email address?
Yes, so be sure to leave your email address, and that goes into a data set, and then we send email blasts out about the upcoming meetings. So, what was that?
Oh, my God.
Oh, you didn't.
They couldn't make it, and they're kind of upset because they knew nothing about it. They wouldn't be.
Sure. All the information is going to be on the website. If you take the QR code, take flyers to your neighbors too. Yeah. So we've got extra.
Did I see another area? I am actually a survivor of the 54 corridor. I hit a car on Rock Road on a motorcycle May 17th of this year. And as nice as these projects are, it seems to be that this is a long-term thing. In my view, this needs to be fixed quicker than because of the accidents that we have seen here. Has any thought been about putting roundabouts in those areas that might be quicker than?
I think we need to look at all of the alternatives, and I understand what you're saying. How do we make this safest, the most quick way possible? And that's really the thing of this board. How do we make it safe and do it as prioritize, like those, you saw that heat map. How do we prioritize those areas and move through the process as quickly as possible and as quickly as funding allows?
This is, as you explained, this design process, it seems thorough and impressive. How far into the future do you anticipate this particular design process serving?
That's what we were told.
When will you need to redesign? And there's a follow-up question. How old is the 254 highway in its current form?
Well, hell.
In the late 90s, what was it?
95.
95?
95.
Okay, so we're 25 years into the life of this roadway.
Yep.
Or the design.
Mhm.
And your current study process is going to uncover various deficiencies in that original design. How can we avoid?
How do we future-proof what we're doing right
Yeah.
now? So what I will tell you is, it depends. And what it depends on is how development occurs. You know, I've done a number of these corridor studies across the state, and we, you know, early in my career, we did a corridor study. Okay, everything's gonna be developed in 20 years, then we're gonna have to look at it again. And 15 years have passed, and nothing has occurred along the corridor. So it depends on a variety. You know, we've had a pandemic, we had a recession, we've had all kinds of things that influence the development of the land use that's anticipated along the corridor. So what we like to talk about from a traffic volume perspective is, what are the triggers that we should be, what are the volumes that say, hey, we really need to be looking at an interchange at this location? So rather than looking at the date, we look at how the traffic volumes are growing.
Well, I think everybody understands those circumstances change over time.
Absolutely.
However, I live in Tawanda, and I at one time was really incensed about the fact that at River Valley Road 254, people were dying. A lot. As I recall, the first 11 or 12 months after the roadway was open, there were 11 fatalities there. That's unacceptable to anybody in this road. And in the process of questioning, I was in contact, I was a member of the Tawanda City Council, and on behalf of my community, I contacted the director of the state Department of Transportation. I believe her name was Deb Gruber, maybe? And I posed a number of questions, and in response, and back and forth emails, I learned that the design of the River Valley intersection, as it's built, was actually a third rendition of that design. Multiple renditions because of budget. So we're actually living with the effects of a low budget design. That's frustrating to people. I witnessed 2 fatalities at that intersection myself. That's terrible. How can you possibly stand in the same room with a family that lost a loved one and explain anything? In the process, the city of Tawanda requested new signage, larger signage, more recognizable signage, and some lights. We did get the lights. We didn't get any play on the signage, so the city manager in Tawanda took it upon himself to have a sign prepared that said, "Cross traffic does not stop, look again." It was patterned off of a sign at Highway 50 and your road that was a notorious death trap for years and years. They put that sign up, and 2 days later got a letter from the county engineer that said that sign's illegal. And the city manager said, "Okay, we'll take it down." The response was, "Don't take it down. We got to get our sign to put up there before you can take your sign down." And you know what? The new sign from the county, the only difference between those 2 signs was the new sign was 1 inch shorter than its vertical dimension. My whole point in saying that is sometimes the public's perception of the design process and the implementation of the selected designs really, there's a lot to be reconsidered about that process.
And that's really, first I appreciate your comments, thank you very much. And that's why we're here, because this group travels the corridor every every single day. They've seen the crashes, they've seen the fatalities occur, and that's what we want to hear from you is, here's what we're seeing. And we can take that back and say, these are the geometric improvements that make sense. These are the low budget improvements that make sense. So please put those things down.
Yeah, I think, were you the one that changed the name of the road? Someone changed the name of the road to Death Valley.
That was me.
There you go. Instead of that, really do put some comments of the things that you really see, because we've got a lot of comments in that area today from other meetings that we've had, and I'm not gonna share them right here because I don't want to influence, because I want to see new comments. But there's some interesting things that people have suggested there that we're definitely going to take a look at. River Valley Road is within a floodplain and a floodway. It would be hard to build an interchange there, but you could do it. But there's some other things that could be done potentially that may change that whole outlook of that whole area. So provide those comments, because we are looking at them.
And if you don't want to write the comments, call one of us aside and talk to us and let us know what your concerns are. I mean, if it's better to explain it to us off to the side instead of putting it on a sticky note, we'll put it on a sticky note so we understand it in the way that you're trying to convey the message. Go ahead.
The new concept of road came in 95, right? So we all agree with that. We came back from Las Vegas, we're driving that road in snow, and I looked up and I said they made 70 mile an hour speed limit on an access road. What a simple thing to do to put that down to 60 or 65. Very inexpensive. And yet, if you drive that road, you know people don't do 70.
People are doing well over 70, well over the coast line. Yeah, and that's a common thing that we battle too is, people drive where they feel comfortable or they're in a hurry. So that's a tricky situation to navigate. But I also understand what you're saying. You have more perception reaction time if you have a slower speed.
And we need more police enforcement of speeds along there so people don't drive 80 and 90.
And that is absolutely a technique that's used, that the enforcement is, and then you hear from your neighbor, I got a ticket because I was doing, so that's
Better
good.
a ticket than dead.
Yep, I appreciate it. Yep. So Travis will kind of guide us through the next piece of this meeting after she's done taking notes.
Oh, one more question.
How can we get those rumble strips put back in?
Start with a comment, right? And then use some of those. I don't know if that'd be KDOT or city, county, but put it on a comment, put it at those locations, and it gets noted and then we talk.
Well, some of those rumble strips were put in by the road companies along out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
They heard about it, someone complained about it, they just went out and did it.
They're the ones that put it in at Webb and Greenwich.
Yeah, they put it in
And
all
when
of
they
them.
renamed it, they took them out. They said that they would.
Greenwich still has theirs on the south.
But as we talk about low-cost improvements, that's definitely one of those. So make sure that you know that.
You have a question?
I was going to comment on what John did. That's all did it. They did a community service by putting rumble strips in on all approaches to 254, but only after it was clear that the county wasn't doing anything to make things safer. That's the frustrating part.
And there's all kinds of studies that show that rumble strips are an effective method for reducing crashes. So thank you.
You need a bag of rumble strips on every one of your trucks. There's never short of rumble strips.
Thank you for all your questions. What we want to do now, just really quickly with you, is get in a little bit more detail about our next steps. Really, it has to do with what we're doing from the transportation, engineering side, as well as public engagement. I told you before that we have themes for each round of engagement. So as we go into closing out this year, getting into early next year into the spring, we are going to be focusing on the preferred alternative and recommendations. So I was telling you before, you gave us a lot of feedback, and then we try to place that throughout the quarter. You're going to give us more feedback today, about your reaction to that, other ideas that you have, rumble strips, all these things, okay? And then we need to, what I would say, like, tighten that up into a preferred alternative. So instead of having all of these things, we know the key things that we think we need to have. And then, in addition to drawing that out, we need to write the language that supports that. That's what the recommendations are. So we're going to do that, and we're going to start that process. You will see us again. We'll have another public meeting. We'll meet with our steering committee again. You will see us at pop-ups at community events. What a pop-up is like a micro public meeting. And that means that we go to an event that's either already scheduled or a place where we know there are people, and then we take the project to them. And so today, for example, we were at Butler Community College, and so we were able to talk to students and staff. Tomorrow we're going to go to El Dorado High School, and we'll talk to young drivers hopefully there during lunch. That's what I mean by a pop-up. So we take a copy of our exhibits and our Post-it notes and our markers and our pens, and we have conversations, and that's how we learn more from people that are in the area. And so we are trying. We just give you a date. So that's what I mean when I say pop-ups. We're going to do this. We'll have online commenting. The website is going to be available. This is an IKE project. There's an IKE website with all of the IKE projects, and so this project is one of them. If you Google search it, you can find it. If you look at your info sheet, you can see the address. You can go right there and see all of our content. From there, we'll be closing out the spring, getting into the summer, and that's when we're going to get to final recommendations. So even when we write the language that goes with things, there's still room for editing and changing. And so that's why we need to have a round for final. We want to show you what that is. We'll have it at the public meeting. There'll be commenting online, etc. And that will close out the project. But it's going to be until the summer. So we'll be seeing y'all again, which is good. Let's go to the next slide. These are the key contacts of people that you're probably going to want to talk to. David is on here. Tim Potter is here. He's in the back right there. Raise your hand. There's Tim. He's public affairs. Our project website address is here. It's also on your info sheet. We are going to be taking online commenting until December 15th. So it's early November now, so you have kind of like a month and a half to comment. We also gave you all a comment form when you came in here today. Similar questions, actually the exact same questions that are online and on your comment form. So if that's easier for you, you can do that and just hopefully give it back to us before you leave, okay? You can give it to a staff person, or you can drop it on this table over here where Andy is sitting over here by the microwave. You can drop it over there, we'll collect it like that. If you like to mail things and get a stamp, you can do that, mail it back, I'll get it on my desk, that's fine. We'll combine all of that. Also, if you like to use your phone and you know how to use the camera part and scan, you can scan that QR code right now, and it will let you comment online. Next slide. All right. So we were telling you about these maps, and y'all have seen these maps. The ultimate, again, is over here. The interim is over there. The graphics that were a little bit hard to read are larger scale that you can see on these maps. We want you to do a couple of things. We want you to tell us what's going on from your perspective, but we also want to know the benefits and the impacts of what you're seeing. We also really love to have organized comments. And so here comes color coding again. And so if there are impacts, use one of the red tones of paper. If you have benefits, use the green or the yellow or the blue, something cooler. That's what we're trying to get. That way when we look at things, we kind of know what we're looking at and what the tone of that comment is supposed to be about. Does that make sense? So, all right, it's 6:30. We're going to be here until 7. We're going to listen after this meeting. You can go online, you can email us, you can go online to comment, all of that. So I'm going to turn you loose to go to either side. If one of them fills up, please just go to the other one. We're going to be here till